Yes, ma'am. Hello, hello.
Hey, hey.
Hey. It's a Wednesday.
Yes.
All right. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good now. What are we drinking tonight?
Oh, tonight we have some rosé. Rosé all day. Because I slay.
Ooh,
I slay. I slay.
I love it. I'm gonna try that next time.
What about you?
I have a French Margaux, Segla Wineries. It is from the Bordeaux region, red Bordeaux wine.
Nice. Yeah, my rosé is actually the Snoop Dogg rosé. Have you heard of that?
Yes, but I've never tried it.
Oh my gosh, it's actually so good. I'm typically a red drinker, but this is a rosé that I can get with, so you have to try it.
Very nice. Maybe we can get Snoop to sponsor us.
I would love that.
That would be so fire. Okay. I love it. I love it. All right. So what do we got going on today?
Yeah, so we are here for episode 2, and we are talking about how everybody swears the market is trash, but the agents are crying, the buyers are crying, the TikTok economists are crying, but investors, baby, investors, they are eating. And so, yes, I brought data and I brought wine.
Hello. I think that's our cue.
So, friends, if you're new here, I'm Miosha Williams.
And I'm Joie Ashworth.
And we're the kind of agents who see wild things every single day. But the good news is we get to whine about it on
Wednesday.
Okay. So today we're going to break down why real estate feels terrible for buyers, yet investors are feasting. And why 25-26 might actually be the year you should become an investor if you play your cards right.
Yes. All right. I love it. Let's go. Let's do this.
All right. So here are the facts before we argue, and we might, but let's talk about the facts first. So first, home buyers are squeezed by high rates and low affordability. But investors aren't buying emotionally, they are buying strategically.
Ooh.
Rents are still rising in most markets. Inventory is slowly rising, and it's not crashing, but it is shifting. Builders are dominating and offering investor-friendly incentives. And DSCR loans, which we'll talk about in a second, are back and they are strong.
Nice. Okay. Strategic. You're telling me regular people are out here crying in their they're not their Cheerios, but their pre-approvals. And investors are out here getting concessions and lower payments. I mean, can you make it make sense, Miosha?
Yeah, honestly, it's really simple. So home buyers are buying with feelings and investors are buying with numbers. So, number one, here's the thing. Investors really don't care about the rates because ultimately their strategy is they're going to refinance later, they're going to price in the risk, and their tenants are going to pay the mortgage.
Meanwhile, first-time home buyers are out here fainting every time somebody says 7-point anything.
Correct. Yeah. And so what we're going to get into in this segment is really just talking about how investors are using creative financing. So in this segment, we'll talk about DSCR loans, partnerships, HELOCs, bridge loans, seller concessions, and builder incentives. And so I'll kind of give you like a breakdown of that. And do we have our investor guests here? And if so, we'll get them in the room to join this conversation. But I wanted us to talk about kind of like what the loans and what the financing strategies are. I'll tell you why investors love them. And then I'll give you like some expert insight for you to think about.
And speaking of our guest expert, We do have him with us, and his name is Sean Williams. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, hello. Can you
What's
hear me?
going on? Yeah, we can hear you. We just introduced you. We just started talking about DSCR. So, can you enlighten us?
So I'm gonna hang try to come back in because I'm getting.
We can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay, perfect. Um yeah, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to join. I appreciate it. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm driving, so I can't see who's on.
No
It, it's
worries.
it's no worries. It's just me, Miosha Williams, no relation. That's Dr. Miosha Williams to you. And we are just hanging out in the Wine About It Wednesday studio. I have your
Nice.
banner going across the bottom of the screen. So if people want to get in touch with you, that will be very easy there. But yeah, DSCR loans, we're just trying to make it make sense. Why first-time home buyers are out here crying and fainting about 7% interest rates while investors are out here scooping up all the deals, buying houses with somebody else's money and somebody else paying it off. How does the DSCR loan work?
um well, you're right. So I think the key piece is the part where you mentioned investors. So investors a lot of times they come in with a entrepreneurial business mindset, whereas like a homeowner, more often than not, there's emotion. Like there's some emotional attachment. You're purchasing a home to actually live, and you're thinking about the shelter aspect of it, and being able to afford it, and just getting in for sort of a totally different reason. And although like owning a home specifically for a home, a home buyer that's going to live there, it serves sort of two purposes. Like I mentioned, it gives you shelter, but also it's a financial investment vehicle. Whereas someone that's an investor, um, more often than not, it's not a place where they're going to kind of rest their head. They're going to use it to benefit them financially, and so they tend to go into these opportunities, like I mentioned, more entrepreneurial, more business minded. And so with that, with the DSCR, um, you are using someone else's money. A lot of times, the investors wouldn't even qualify for an agency loan, like a standard, FHA conventional loan. And so the DSCR helps the investor actually qualify. They can buy more because they're not using their income per se from their job or whatever it might be, or their business to qualify. So DSCR is debt service coverage ratio, and what it simply means is does the uh, does the income from the property generate enough to cover the debt that's on the property? So, do you make more money um, on the asset than you spend? The answer is yes. Or if it's equal, then you can do this loan. So simply with the DSCR loan, the investor identifies a property. There's a down payment required to purchase this particular property, and you look at the monthly payment on it. How much is it going to cost to actually own the asset? Um, then you want to think about how much I can rent this particular property for. And as long as it cash flows or breaks even, uh, then they'd be eligible to purchase this particular property with no income documentation, because it's simply the asset that's going to be the income. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, Sean, what I heard you say is that instead of you qualifying based on your personal income, like a W 2, a tax return, or debt to income ratio, what you're looking at from a lender perspective with the DSCR is the property's ability to pay for itself. And so, if that projected income covers the mortgage, then there is a strong possibility that they could qualify.
For sure. Yes. Yeah.
And so, friends, I would say that the reason why investors would love this particular financing strategy is that it really is ideal for full-time investors or entrepreneurs or high-income earners with those complex tax returns. It might even be a faster underwriting with fewer personal documentation requirements. And I've seen them often used for like those short-term rentals, long-term rentals, and portfolio growth. So you're kind of like shifting your mindset to be can I afford this to can this property perform? And that mindset alone can change the game for investors. So, Sean, what DSCR ratio do lenders typically look for, and how flexible is it in today's market?
Um, so 1% really, what 1% really means is that you're breaking even.
Okay.
Um, um, Somewhere between 1 to 1.25%. So if you're the 0.25 means that you're making that much more in cash flow. Some lenders will allow for a negative, which would be like 0.75 or something like that. That's rare. And if they allow for negative cash flow, then it just requires a larger down payment to do it. But I think for the rule of thumb, whoever's listening should be thinking about breaking even. Like, does the property break even? The goal is always the cash flow, though, to make more money than you spend. But if you're right there, so if your mortgage is 3,000 a month and you're going to rent it for 3,000 a month, there's a strong possibility that you have you have an option to do this loan. That's just a rule of thumb. That doesn't always mean that it's going to work that way, because lenders are going to want to see that there is positive cash flow, but breaking even is the start. Does
Awesome.
that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that your time with us is limited, so there are a couple of other financing strategies that we're going to talk about, and we're going to give you the option to choose which one you'd like us to talk about first before you have to go. So
It's all good.
next on the list is either partnerships, HELOCs, bridge loans, or seller concessions. Anything stand out to you that you see a lot with investors that you want to talk about next?
Well, it's funny you say that. I just got off of a call. I was texting Joao earlier, and I was actually on the line with a client, and they were using a HELOC. And so I've always been a fan of HELOCs. If you understand that it's a vehicle to get where you're looking to go. Most, how can I say this? Most like wildly successful business people, entrepreneurs, the millionaires that I know, um, they started out with the HELOC. They leveraged their home.
And tell us
Um,
what a HELOC stands for the ones listening or viewing that have never heard of this.
HELOC, HELOC is the acronym for Home Equity Line of Credit. Home Equity Line of Credit. In its simplest form, the way I explain it to people, is it's like a credit card. Just it works almost identical to a credit card, except for the your home is the leverage to actually obtain it. And you want to think about credit cards like in this day and age, no matter how great your credit is, how much money you make, you get a credit card, you're looking over 20% interest on a credit card these days. Also, if you're looking to take like, say, hey, 50, $100,000 because you want to use it as a down payment to purchase another home, pay for your kids' college, start a business, pay off debt, whatever it might be. Um, Chances are you're not going to find a credit card that's going to give you a limit that will be as high as a home equity line of credit. So I was on the phone talking to someone tonight. They were actually buying a family, a couple. They currently own a funeral home, and they lease this particular funeral home. And they're it's weird kind of talking about it, but their competition down the street
Mm-hmm.
is going, wants to sell and kind of go out of business. So now they have an opportunity to take an existing business that they've had for decades, um, that they lease, meaning they sort of like renting it. They're not sort of, but renting it, and have no ownership, only the contents inside this particular property. And now they can take over and purchase another funeral home, and purchase the actual property. And so for them, they're going to leverage their home. They're going to use a home equity line of credit to use for the commercial loan that they're about to get, and they're going to take that money and use it for the down payment on this new business. And so the way I explained it to the wife of the business, because she had some questions about it and how it works, and I said, just imagine it being a giant credit card. So like if you think about like a credit card, if you have a $10,000 limit to spend, and you use $5,000, you're going to pay on the $5,000 that you spent, and then you're going to have $5,000 available to use at a later date. Once you use that $5,000 and you quote unquote max your card out, then there's no more money available, and you make the payments on it, and as you pay down on the principal of that particular card, you'll have availability to spend. So the same way with a home equity line of credit, except for it doesn't come with a 20% interest rate, and you have the ability to go tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can use and draw against the equity of your property. And one thing we talked about, like I hear a lot of people, they kind of, I won't say brag, but they talk about how much equity they have in their property, and it's a great thing and it's a good feeling. But at the end of the day, that means nothing until you actually go and grab the money, until you take the money. And so this is the form of taking your equity out of your property, using or leveraging it to based on what we've kind of been talking about tonight. You could use it to acquire other real estate, and like in my client situation tonight, they're buying real estate, but they're also using it to effectively expand an existing business that they own, and scale that particular business. So a home equity line of credit works in a way in which you draw a certain amount of money. You have an available, like a limit that you can spend, and you pay on what's drawn from that amount, and whatever the difference is, you can keep drawing until you max it out or not, or you can keep it like kind of hanging out there for a while, and use it, save it for a rainy day. The conversations that I have with my investors and people is that, you both know this, is that opportunities come when you aren't prepared most of the time. Like when you don't have access to money or capital, or you're not thinking about shifting or moving into something different. Like
Yes.
all these opportunities come about. Everybody's calling, and there's always something that comes about. And the not being ready for those opportunities is a disadvantage. So even if you don't use the money, grab the HELOC. Like we just went through some unprecedented times where people are losing jobs, and things cost more nowadays. College is costing more, and people and the loans are different these days. And so like just imagine living in a property, you lose your job, and now you can't qualify to take the equity out of the house that you currently have. So why not, when things are going decent or well for you, come up with a strategy so that it would help you, have a sustainable future. So I talk to people about that too as well, because you want to, how do I say it? Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And
there
so
you go.
When those opportunities come about, you're prepared to capitalize on them or not. And so you just put yourself in a great position that way. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, like in regards to what a HELOC is, or, but it's a really great tool for people to use to build wealth, using this home equity line of credit.
Absolutely. So what I heard from that conversation around HELOCs is that really it allows investors to tap into that equity that they already have from either like a primary residence or an investment property, because it's really flexible revolving capital. And so the reason why investors are using HELOCs is because they have lower interest rates compared to hard money. Their funds can be reused if they pay them down. And it's really ideal for things like down payments, renovations, or bridge gaps. And the key takeaway here, though, is that the equity that they have within their property is really dormant money unless they activate it. And HELOCs are one of the cleanest ways that investors can do that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And like I mentioned, it's just it's a great safety net because I think back to some of my friends and folks that I talk to, and I'm thinking specifically those that were ripped from their employment, or just lost a job for whatever reason. Like right now, they can't, they, you know, they're struggling, right? But they're sitting there and they have these homes that they've owned for 10, 15, 20 years, but they don't qualify.
Uh-oh. Did we
Uh-oh.
lose you,
I think
Sean?
we may have lost him.
Oh, I hear you back. Sean, do you have a hard stop or can you do one more
No, I can do
strategy?
one more. I still have about another 15, 20 minutes on my drive.
Okay.
So it's, yeah, I can talk for as long as you need me to.
Okay.
All right, awesome. Let's talk about bridge loans next. And what my understanding with a bridge loan is that it's really short-term financing that's used to kind of bridge that gap between buying and stabilizing a refinancing of a property. So what more can you say about that and maybe some common scenarios that you've seen and how bridge loans have been used with investment?
So let's talk about so I'll get back to that, right? But let's talk about like a short-term loan. I heard you mention earlier a hard money.
Yeah.
So a form of a bridge loan, so to speak, would be something like that. So like um, uh, this is for someone who doesn't necessarily own the property and you're going to purchase it. So there are loans out there, fix and flip, hard money type loans where you can get a short term loan, typically somewhere between 12 to 18 months. Um, and you can borrow money to acquire a property and use the money to fix the property up. Um, and then, you know, you have a certain amount of time to complete that project to pay it off. And then, you know, pay it off, meaning refinance it or keep it and maybe turn it into a rental property, or you can sell the property and take the proceeds from the sale and kind of do it all over again, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a form of a short-term loan that could be considered a bridge loan. But like I'm seeing that more in the marketplace, and there are specific loans out there that compete with hard money lenders because a lot of times the hard money lenders, some of their terms aren't the most favorable, and especially if you don't have a relationship with the private lender, they're not always willing to take a risk on that person that they haven't done business with or know. And so the terms aren't the most favorable with like higher rates and fees and such that are associated with it, larger down payments, shorter terms to pay them back. And so there are lenders, institutional lenders with money now that are doing what's called fix and flip loans that act as you know as a short-term loan to help investors to be able to purchase that way. Um, the other thing that you know when I'm not the ultimate expert though on a bridge loan. I do the fix and flip stuff. We do a lot of those, but the
Mm-hmm.
traditional sense of like a bridge loan is like having money to tie you over while you complete a project, or you have something that's currently on the market and it's not going to sell fast enough, so you need to get a quick loan against the equity in the property so that you can go buy another one. And then when you sell that particular home or whatnot, you could use the proceeds from the sale to pay the bridge loan off. That would be the financing that some investors will be thinking about, so that you're not like kind of stuck in a project and can't move on to the next one when the opportunities present itself.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing in terms of like common scenarios on when this might be a fit for an investor would be like if they're buying before selling another property, they're acquiring a property that needs renovation before qualifying for maybe some long-term financing, or maybe even competing in like a fast-moving market where the speed is what really matters. So for me, it sounds like This one's all about speed and flexibility, the ability to close quickly, and it's useful for maybe like some value add or transitional properties, and not really built for comfort, right? It's just meant for a strategy that they can use in order to address some time and execution needs that they have.
Yeah, it's totally a strategy. It's not comfort at all because you have a shorter period to pay it back, and the rates on these will be higher. So like just even in a common scenario, like with a standard homeowner in Joao, we deal with this sometimes. Like you have a a homeowner that's got their house on the market to sell, and so it's ideal for them to be able to sell that particular home to buy the next house. It just feels better, and financially it works best for them. However, they still qualify. They can carry two mortgages on paper, right? But it just for their budget and the emotional aspect of it, it just doesn't feel good and it doesn't work for them. But sometimes, especially market a couple years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, we couldn't buy house. Well, our clients couldn't buy houses contingent upon the sale of their home. So if you have a property that's on the market that maybe hasn't sold fast enough, or you're prepping it to get to the market, but like in the HELOC scenario, you have equity in your property, and you have enough equity, you can do a short-term loan or bridge loan, and use that money and roll it into your next purchase. And then when you sell the home that the bridge is against, then you just you pay it off. And so it becomes a tool and a strategy for you to be able to move faster and to be able to acquire property and like I mentioned, in a quicker time frame.
And so we've talked
And so
about
that applies
three.
with an investor as well, obviously.
So we've talked about three creative financing strategies. So we'll do one more and you get to pick your poison, Sean. So we've already talked about DSCR loans. We talked about HELOCs and bridge loans. Which one would you like to wrap us up with? Either partnerships, seller concessions, or builder incentives?
And what aspect am I coming from? From an investment aspect or
Yes, from
just
an
a standard
investment
homeowner?
aspect.
So give oh well, this is a one that's a misconception. Well, it depends. It depends. So the guy, and I might be able to touch on more than one, but the guidelines typically, at least from an agency loan, and when I say agency, I'm talking Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan, talking like the desktop underwriting and such. Those loans, the maximum seller contribution for an investor, no matter how much money you put down, is 2%. So it doesn't matter how much the seller is willing to give you towards the purchase of your property. 2% is the maximum that you can take for an investment property that's doing agency. With the non-qualified or the non-QM loans, like we're talking DSCR and such, the seller can contribute more, to more than 2% in most cases towards the um, closing cost. So what I would say for an investor that's purchasing, you want to think about your cash outlay. Specifically, I just had one like this where an investor was doing a fix and flip. They needed 15% to to acquire the property, and then we were going to finance the 100% of the renovation cost. However, the appraisal came back short. Short meaning the property was the after repair value wasn't as high as they anticipated it to be, and um, based on their business plan, which meant that they had to come up with more money to purchase this particular home. So they didn't have a lot more money than what they had already budgeted, the 15% plus covering like their own closing costs and such. And I think there was even an assignment fee and such to a wholesaler. So they were spending a ton of money. So what they had to do is the seller, to keep the deal alive, had to pay some money towards their closing costs to cover the money that the buyer, the investor, was spending to purchase this property because things started to sort of unravel for them. So Seller contribution for anybody's, not anybody, but for those that are listening to this, can be used, meaning the seller can contribute money towards paying your closing costs and your prepaid items in these deals. And so they can contribute a percentage of the sales price to go towards the, those costs for attorney fees and, certain taxes and lender fees and such.
That's awesome. So what I heard from that conversation as it relates to another strategy is seller. And that really is about when they're agreeing to cover some of those expenses. And the reason why investors are really taking advantage of this strategy is because it's really reducing the cash that they need at closing. It can improve that monthly cash flow that they have, and it creates some leverage in like slower or balanced markets. And it's really not about them asking for a favor. It's really about constructing that win-win situation so that everybody gets what they need out of the deal.
Yes, for sure. For sure. You should always be going into these deals thinking about cash flow for more importantly, if you're going to be a renter or a landlord, I should say, think about your cash flow. Is this property going to generate, am I going to make more money from renting it than what I'm spending in mortgage? And then also, how much am I spending to acquire the property, right? And so that's a part of your acquisition strategy, getting seller contribution, because it'll allow you to keep some money in your pocket that you could be using towards improvements in the house, or using it to roll into your next transaction. So I do find that seller contribution is important, but if you don't need it, you can also use that as a negotiating tool to potentially lower the price of your acquisition, because, hey, seller, I don't need you to contribute any money towards my purchase. And so what I'd like you to do is take that off the cost of the house, because I know Joie is seeing this. It's a softer market. So sellers are, the buyers are asking for this. And whether you're a homeowner to live as a primary residence, or an investor. So the sellers are kind of being prepared and expect a lot of times to pay the seller contribution. So either way, whether it works for you to get the money to offset those costs, or as a negotiation tool for you to get the property for less, that's something you should also be thinking about when you're purchasing.
Well, thank you so much, Sean. We have really enjoyed hearing your expertise as it relates to how investors can use some creative financing. And so you are more than welcome to hang out with us on the call. We are halfway through kind of where we are in terms of explaining to our audience why investors are winning. So we started off with talking about how they really don't care about the rates. We just finished talking about investors using creative financing. And within that, we talked about a lot of things: DSCR loans, HELOCs, bridge loans, seller concessions. And now we're going to talk about kind of like cash flow and investor competition before we get into the haters will say.
Yes. Fun. So, I mean, we're talking about investing. It just makes me remember I bought my first house with this in mind. I was going to live in there, but at the same time, there's nothing stopping you from paying attention to how this property might cash flow in the future. You might not live there the rest of your life. You might decide that that is going to be your starter investment property. So think about that when you purchase your first house, if you have that as a luxury. Not everybody has that luxury to look in zip codes that actually would make a great rental property someday. But I mean, what I hear everybody saying is stop searching in the zip code you personally want to live in, right?
Absolutely. And so we know that the hedge funds have slowed down. We have noticed also that some of the novice investors are backing out. And so this is really providing a prime opportunity for those smart investors to come in and scoop in those deals. So in transition, let's talk about what the haters will say.
Yes. So hater number one, I'm going to be the hater. You all love it. Investing is too risky right now. The market might crash.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Historically, rents aren't crashing. And what we also see is that the markets that do dip are really just opportunities for investment. They're not necessarily warnings.
All right. I love it. Let's do hater number 2. People can't afford homes right now. So, how are investors supposed to?
That's a really, really great question. So, what I'll do is I'll lead us back to that conversation we had around DSCR loans, because remember that with that type of creative financing, investors don't need the W 2 approvals. So, really, this is just saying that if the rent is going to cover the mortgage, you're likely going to be approved. Period.
Mm-hmm. But investors are losing money. I saw it on TikTok.
Girl, TikTok is also the place where people get relationship advice from strangers with ring lights. Goodbye.
Next.
Next.
What about Airbnb regulation? The Airbnb crash.
So here's the thing with that. That's a really great point. But here's the thing, short term rentals aren't dead, okay? The bad operators of those short term rentals are. So the midterm rentals are strategic, STR, rentals, and they are still thriving. And we'll talk about that here in a second.
Very nice. All right, here's our last hater. I don't have enough money to invest.
So here's the thing, this is about strategy more than money. So let's think about, could you partner with somebody? Could you use a HELOC? Could you use some strategies like co-hosting or house hacking or a DSCR loan? You can pick your lane. And so we'll talk about some of those here in just a second.
All right, so let's move on. Circle back around to some of the things that we mentioned. What should we do in 2025, 2026? New Year's resolution.
New Year's resolution. So if you are a buyer 25, 26, here's your game plan. You need to get pre-approved early. You need to expand your geography. It may not be in the area in which you would initially think, but expand that thought process, because we're thinking strategically and not with emotions. 3, you want to consider maybe some new construction. And Joie, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, because I know that you are kind of an expert as it relates to new construction. I'm just going to put you out there. And then don't compete emotionally. That's the key, right? We're talking numbers and strategy. And you also want to look for some homes that are sitting on the market for maybe 30 or more days. So let's reel back to new construction for a second and maybe just expand a little bit on why that might be a good piece of the game plan.
Honey, follow the money. Okay. When it comes to investing using new construction, new builds, I need y'all to plug in, because there are investors, especially overseas, pay attention. They're buying up brand new properties in phase 1, and they're waiting until those incentives get really, really, really good. Now would be a great time when builders are offering year-end closeout concessions. I'm talking $30,000 or more cash. They're adding on a free deck. They're doing all kinds of wackadoodle stuff to get you to pull the trigger and buy that home. If you add in, look how close this property is to a bus line or a metro, that's a no-brainer. So, really pay attention. If you plug in and you're watching, what does this builder typically offer? What does that builder typically offer? And then all of a sudden, those concessions and incentives go up, like skyrocket. That's your time. That's your time to shine. And yeah, I do a lot of new construction, but it's typically first-time home buyers. They're overthinking everything. They don't understand the numbers. So I've got both of our contact information scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If you need more information, because we're not going to spend a lot of time on this today, but if you need more information on how to win with new construction as it relates to investing and getting off the ground, you're going to be a real estate mogul in 2026. You need to reach out to one of us and we will get you on track.
Here, here. I'll drink to that.
Yes, ma'am. Let's gotta drink to that. We're talking money.
So let's round this out and let me talk specifically to my aspiring investors. So if you are an aspiring investor listening right now, I want to say this clearly, and I'm going to say it loud for the people in the back. You do not need to do everything. You just need to do one thing well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk, and I want you to focus on one of them. One. So the first one is those midterm rentals that typically serve, like, think your traveling professionals or your insurance displaced people or families in between homes, right? These are typically going to be like your furnished rentals with stays that are longer than the short term of like an Airbnb, but shorter than like a traditional lease. So this might be good for you if you're thinking about more stability than a nightly Airbnb. You often have fewer local regulations in comparison to a short term. It's going to give you some higher monthly income. And there's less management intensity because you're not flipping over clients as often. So that might be a strategy. If you are thinking about entering to the short-term rental space, that may be a good entry point. Number two, another option could be co-hosting without owning the property. So let me just be really clear. Co-hosting allows you to manage some of those short-term rentals for property owners in exchange for a percentage of revenue or a flat fee. So sometimes when people hear co-hosting, they're thinking, oh, that's arbitrage. Like, I'm going to, rent from the owner and then I'm going to take the margin. That is very different. Same umbrella, very different. When I'm talking about, I want you to think more of like you're being a property manager for a short-term rental or a midterm rental, and it's fee-based. So you're getting 15 to 20% of like those gross bookings, or you're getting a flat management fee. And it's a lot less risk than arbitrage, where you're having to sign a lease, you're having to pay the rent regardless of whether someone rents the property or not. And it's really based off of the margins. Okay, so co-hosting could be a strategy. Third is house hacking. I have seen this blow up everywhere, right? So house hacking is when you're living in the property and you're renting out the rest. So this could look a couple of ways. It could be like a duplex or a triplex. It could be you renting rooms in a single family home. It could also be like an accessory dwelling unit. So when we say that and you hear ADU for short, what we're really talking about here is like, maybe it's a detached. Maybe there's like a little cottage or something in the back, a tiny home. Maybe it's attached, like it's built onto the house, like an addition. We've seen garage conversions. We've also seen what we call frogs, which stands for finished room over the garage. Those could be ways that you're house hacking there. So this is going to help you build that equity while reducing your personal housing costs. And so powerful for people who want to own their first home and invest at the same time. And then we talked a little bit about DSCR funding. You could do that from a short-term rental perspective. And this is really where you're using that loan to purchase a property where the projected short-term rental income supports the loan. So again, this is going to focus on the property performance from day one. It's going to scale faster, and it doesn't require you to do anything related to W-2s. And lastly, I would say maybe something to consider is long-term rental in a cash flow market. And so this is really, I would say, more on the traditional side in terms of strategies. It's really where you're just purchasing a property in a market where the rent comfortably exceeds expenses and holding it long term. So it's a smart investment if you're looking for like predictable income. You want lower management intensity. The financing options are typically easier, and there's also a strong foundation that you're building for portfolio growth. So don't look at long-term rentals as like boring, right? They're stable, and stability can be power when you're building your first foundation. So, think about that. And again, only choose one. All right. And essentially the mindset shift here is, you're going to have to stop waiting for perfect conditions. It's never going to be perfect, but the key is investors are still eating during market discomfort, not during market comfort, because they're being strategic and not emotional. What would you say to that, Joa?
Yes, 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 and yes, Miosha. Listen, you ate with that, And you have convinced me. I love this. Investors really are out here eating, and I want to play too.
Well, good girl, because I am serving strategy all day and wine every Wednesday.
Let's do it. All right. Cheers to Wine About It Wednesday.
Yes, friends, comment invest. If you want to be sent a free investor cheat sheet, we got you. Just let us know. And I guess that's all for this episode, right?
That's all for today, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channels and catch us on socials. Everything is down in the bottom. Well, it was. Let me see.
It's there. I see it scrolling.
It's scrolling. Our contact information is scrolling. So don't forget, reach out and don't be shy. Ask a million questions. Ask us anything. We don't bite. People love talking to us about all things real estate. Catch us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we will see you next time on Wine About It Wednesday.
Cheers.
Cheers.